Today is April the 28th. Today, we want to find good where we least expect it. Reading through the Bible in a year, on Thursdays and Fridays, we read through Jesus' ministry, looking at parallel passages. Today, if you would please, read Matthew 20, 17 to 34, Mark 10, 32 to 52, Luke 18, 31 to 19, 27. As we look at these paragraphs, we see that Jesus begins with a prediction of his death and resurrection for the third time. Now, immediately following that, in Matthew and Mark, Jesus teaches about service. He does so when James and John come to Jesus and they ask him for the right and left hand in his kingdom, the number 1 and number 2 slot. Jesus responds to them. They come to him saying, "Lord, give us whatever we would ask you." Jesus says, "Well, what do you want?" And they say, "Slots number 1 and 2 in your kingdom." Jesus says, "No, you've got to learn how to serve instead." Now, in all 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus follows that up by healing a blind man. Matthew says there were actually 2 blind men. But it's interesting that when the blind men are brought to Jesus, in the book of Mark in particular, Jesus looks at the blind man and says, "What would you like me to do for you?" Now, this is the very same question that he asks of James and John. "What do you want me to do for you?" James and John responded by saying, "We want power. We want prestige. We want slots number 1 and 2 in your kingdom." He asked that of the blind man. The blind man said, "Lord, I want to see." Now, several times we find Jesus using episodes like this to teach his disciples. This is certainly one of those. I kind of think Jesus looked around, found James and John among the 12, and kind of went, "Why couldn't you have asked me for this? I would have gladly given you sight." He then heals the blind men. After that, in the book of Luke, we have the story of Zacchaeus. Beautiful story. In the book of Luke, we're now in chapter 19. Jesus finds Zacchaeus, who's short and can't see over other people in the crowd. Finds him climbing a sycamore fig tree so that he can see Jesus as he walks by. When Jesus looks up in the tree and he sees a man, he stops. He walks over to the foot of the tree. He says, "Who are you?" "I'm Zacchaeus." He says, "Zacchaeus, come on down. I'm inviting myself to your house for dinner." During the meal, Zacchaeus says 2 things. In Luke 19:8, he says, "Today, I will give half of my wealth to the poor. And if anyone can prove that I've cheated them on their taxes, I'll pay them back 4 times what they paid." Now, that was not so much a statement of how he was going to pay back people for what he had cheated them. It was more a statement saying, "I haven't cheated anyone. If you can prove it, I will give you 4 times what you say I cheated you out of." So what do we find here in this passage? We find Jesus saying, what you want is not always what I'll give you. If you're looking for power, you won't get that. But if you're looking for sight, let me help you have good vision. Then in the book of Luke, he finds Zacchaeus and he says, here's a man that has his head screwed on straight. He has a good vision. He's willing to give up his wealth because he realizes that wealth will not gain him favor with God. He's a man who's had integrity in a difficult position. Being a tax collector, the other tax collectors in the area would have cheated the people that they collected tax from. Zacchaeus apparently didn't. The Lord's saying, here is what you need to do to follow me. Like, follow, and subscribe to this devotional on whatever platform you used to listen to it. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Tomorrow, we'll answer the question, why did the people who shouted Hosanna on Palm Sunday shout crucify him on Good Friday?